Bradley, you shouldn't be eating so much of that garbage. You know that it's bad for you.
But Dad, Uncle Joe knows it's bad for him, but he still does cocaine all the time.
Well, Timmy, Uncle Joe has a problem. He's addicted. Since you already have a basic understanding of neuron synapses and signal transduction, let me explain to you
how hijacking of reward pathways leads to addiction. Imagine a mouse. Whoa there, little fella. Imagine a mouse in a cage. Inside the cage, there is food, and there is a button. When the button is pressed, it supplies the mouse with a pleasurable stimulus. Experiments have shown that a mouse in this situation will push the button, and push it, and keep pushing it, ignoring the food, even to the point of starvation and death. This looks like a weird experiment, but some people are like this. How can this happen? How can hijacking of reward pathways lead to addiction? Reward pathways are the reason we feel pleasure when we eat, when we drink, and when we have sex. The explanations for evolution can be complex, but basically, reward pathways evolved because it motivates behavior that increases the chance of survival. For example, fatty food tastes good because it's high in calories, providing lots of energy. Another example, during sex, animals may be more vulnerable to attacks, but the behavior is rewarded nonetheless because it can generate offspring, which is beneficial to the survival of the species as a whole. Overall, there's a logic to what feels good. In reward pathways, the key neurotransmitter is dopamine. It's released in regions of the brain in response to a stimulus. This very simplified diagram shows dopamine being released into the synapse in response to a stimulus. But do note that reward pathways are a whole network of which dopamine is but one single component. Just remember that a stimulus causes a neurological response, which leads to behavior.
So, how does a pathway that makes us feel really good and encourages survival, how can that be a bad thing, Dad?
Well, Mikey, the problem occurs when something takes advantage of the reward pathways. The relative strength of stimuli is key. If the substance's pleasurable effect is strong enough, it can cause you to ignore other stimuli. In this experiment, the mouse received cocaine, but other drugs could yield similar results. In fact, most psychoactive drugs are a much more potent stimulus than regular activities are. Pressing the button, for the mouse, felt orders of magnitude better than eating, which is the reason why it starved. In our example, the short-term effect of cocaine is blocking the transporters that usually remove dopamine back out of the synaptic cleft. This leads to a hyperstimulation of the postsynaptic neuron and a longer pleasurable effect, which causes the euphoria associated with cocaine use.
So it makes us feel really good for a little bit. Then why doesn't the mouse feel really good and then have a snack when it's hungry and then go back to feeling really good?
Well, Frankie, that's a good point. In a normal organism, the reward pathways are always semi-balanced. You're right. If the mouse gets hungry, it would ignore something and go eat. It prioritizes. But addiction makes the priorities go haywire, and the reward system becomes out of control. Addiction is affected by 3 factors. Environmental factors, like society, your family, your neighborhood, etc. It's also affected by genetic factors. Both factors play a significant role in your susceptibility to addiction, but we will focus on the neurological factors. Consider again our simplified diagram, now showing the dopamine receptors on the postsynaptic neuron. Cocaine is still blocking the transporters, making dopamine remain in the synaptic cleft much longer than usual. In a long-term effect, the neurons react to this hyperstimulation and can downregulate the dopamine receptors. So the drug has changed the reward circuitry. The drug has caused long-term changes to the wiring of the brain. This is only one of many changes that can result from addiction, and doesn't just happen with cocaine. It's observed in all kinds of addictions. Now, because of the reduced number of dopamine receptors, regular activities that the mouse would partake in are less rewarding and much more likely to be ignored. Likewise, the drug hits themselves become less rewarding too. One says the addict becomes tolerant, causing them to seek higher doses. And when those higher doses become less rewarding through addiction, the addict seeks even higher doses, and higher doses, and higher doses, and higher, and higher. And this destructive behavior can spiral into death.
So, Bobby, I hope you have a better understanding about how the reward pathways function in addiction. Try thinking about how other psychoactive drugs may affect the body, or even behaviors lead to addiction. That cereal you're eating is okay in moderation, but keep in mind that certain drugs can lead to addictive behavior and permanent changes in the neuron in your brain after just one single use. Be careful. Drugs can be dangerous.
Wow, Dad, I didn't know that cereal could be so dangerous, but today I didn't have 12 bowls of chocolate frosted sugar bombs, because I had 11. And this bowl is his.